Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Simple Fix. I am your host, Olivia. I am so happy that you are here. Today is going to be another episode of a simple fix tool that I love and use on a daily basis. But before we get started, I wanted to go back to our handy dandy highs and lows. I feel like I am still on a high from visiting my friends in Los Angeles. I went a couple weeks ago now, and if you missed last week's episode, you should definitely go take a listen. I interview my childhood friend, Michael, who has a successful furniture and interior design company. We talked about finding balance in business and in life and finding purpose and peace within your home. It was just chef's kiss. So I had just an amazing time being able to be refreshed and get myself near the ocean. It was pretty gloomy and rainy, but still incredible nonetheless. I feel like being able to have that time to rest and relax and be rejuvenated was good for my soul, good for my mental health, good for my body even, and it has really gotten me through these last couple of weeks. As far as lows go, I am a little bit overwhelmed with all of my summer travels. It is exciting, but I am such a homebody, and I am somebody who loves to be alone at home with my dog, and I've got, family and friends that I'm going to be visiting and a Taylor Swift concert that I will be going to and just lots of really fun trips and little travels here and there. I have to sometimes just get into the zone because I could really stay at home and clean and vacuum my couch every day and I'd be happy, which is such a weird thing to admit. And so I'm glad that I'm getting out of my comfort zone, and I'm glad that I'm going to be traveling quite a bit this summer. But it is, a little taxing and a little draining sometimes, and that's okay. And I can acknowledge that and set myself up for success by taking time in between to really rejuvenate and rest. And I keep saying the word rest because today's episode is all about how to really, really rest. We will be talking about the simple fix tool of active rest. Now, first things first, rest is a necessity. It is not a reward. I feel like society has deemed it to be something that we deserve after we have done the work, regardless of how taxing said work may be. As someone who is chronically productive, for example, before I started this podcast episode, I vacuumed and mopped and did laundry and did the dishes and did all of these things that really could have waited because I feel the need to be productive. I feel the need to do something. It is extraordinarily difficult for me to rest, for me to take time for myself and not feel guilty about it, not feel like I am wasting time and not feel like I am undeserving of it. I think our generation has a struggle with rest not being beneficial. I just recently had a conversation with a couple of my friends about this, and I personally think it's because of our constant need to monetize everything and make a dollar on whatever it is that we put our time to. So if we start a new hobby and we start photography, well, then we need to post every single photo on Instagram so that we can somehow monetize it, so that we can, make money off of something that was once just a hobby. Or we start crocheting and now we have to start an Etsy shop and sell our crochet pieces. And I think it's truly because we don't understand the value of rest. We don't understand the value of doing something just to be rejuvenated and just to be refreshed. I also think about my bad habits that I've developed and the habits that I call rest. And that looks like sitting on my phone, scrolling on TikTok, or laying down watching a movie while still catching up on work. And I try to call that rest when in the end I feel more drained than I did before. It's because vegging out or having white noise or multitasking with something that requires low focus, it's essentially killing time until we can go back to doing whatever it is that is deemed important and productive. like just a couple nights ago, it was 9 o'clock and it was a little too late to try to start doing something, but it was a little too early to go to bed. And so I just got on TikTok and I was scrolling and laughing and wasting time until 10 o'clock. And I was like, okay, it's about time that I can get ready for bed. And I pretended to call it rest. How silly is that? Now, when we think of rest, a lot of the times we just think of sleep and we think of a nap. And unfortunately, a nap is not going to satisfy the mental and emotional fatigue that we experience in life. Because just like our physical bodies, our minds need rest as well. I wanted to share 3 ways to find the rest that we're so deeply looking for our minds and not just our bodies. Now, in order for us to be able to understand and utilize that idea of active rest, we have to look at this term that I have coined myself, psychological congestion. And to me, psychological congestion is when we have so much information in our minds and we don't slow down and it gets congested. And our minds can only move so fast. And when we don't slow down and we don't allow our brains to sift through all of our thoughts, things get a little bit messy. So I've been learning how to replenish my mental well-being through active rest. So you've probably heard the terms passive and active rest or recovery if you are an athlete or if you are dedicated to exercise. I remember when I would run, how important it would be to have passive and active recovery. Passive rest is the physical rest. So that includes sleeping and napping. It is essentially what we deem to be rest. Active rest, on the other hand, is about restorative activities, things like yoga, stretching, massage therapy, all those things that help improve the body's circulation and flexibility and recovery. So I understand that from a sports recovery or exercise standpoint. But what does it look like when we look at it from a mental standpoint? Sure, it's great to binge watch TV, eat a bunch of food, or even just have a few drinks and hang out with your friends. Don't get me wrong, these are all things that I enjoy doing in moderation, but we can't deprive ourselves from real, intentional, active rest. There are 3 ways that I enjoy active rest, and I have 3 S's for you. It's somatic regulation, self-care, and sensory activity. And before we jump into that, I want to define really what active rest does for us. Active rest allows us to activate and optimize our parasympathetic nervous system, or in other words, our rest and digest system. And the counter is our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. Activating this parasympathetic nervous system allows for our bodies to truly get deep restorative rest. Active rest also provides an outlet that requires low mental effort. I think that's something that we desire so much, and that's why we go to binge watch TV. That's why we're able to just lay and scroll for hours and hours, because it's very low mental effort, but it doesn't actually provide much restorative healing for us. Active rest also allows for our minds to have the space to properly process and store information. If you've ever studied until like 2 a.m. and then you wake up the next morning and you're like, I don't remember a single thing, it's because you didn't give yourself the proper time to store and process that information. And lastly, active rest helps protect you from chronic stress caused by your sympathetic nervous system unnecessarily being activated. Tool number 1 is somatic regulation. Somatic regulation is naturally monitoring how your body feels and adjusting to it. A good example of that is a baby regulating its emotions and its bodily responses by sucking its thumb. Some things that I love to do is somatic breathing. I talked about this multiple times. There are so many different techniques from Wim Hof to Joe Dispenza, and I really enjoy something that is simple and very straightforward that I could do anywhere and anytime. I love the 4-7-8 method. You start with emptying your lungs. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out of your mouth for 8 seconds. And you do it in 4 breath cycles. Another way to find regulation in your body is to schedule short breaks every 2 hours throughout the day. And for me, that's something that's really difficult because I want to just plow through my work. I want to get it done, and I don't want to get up and take a lunch break. I don't want to get up and take a bathroom break or a water break. I want to be able to get it done. But the work that I'm doing takes hours and hours, and I'm not going to be able to just get it done in one sitting. I feel like these breaks allow me to remind myself to slow down and help stay better in tune with my body and understand what it's asking for at any time. Because if I continue to ignore it by pushing through and not eating when I'm hungry and not drinking water when I'm thirsty or not taking a walk if I'm feeling overwhelmed, your body signals begin to get lost in the mix of everything else, which I think is a really dangerous thing. We have to be in tune and understand and listen to our bodies. Another thing as far as regulation is turning off your bright lights, computer screens, background noise. I feel like I catch myself where I have music on and a podcast playing and me editing a video and my dog barking and there's just so much noise that is happening at once, and it's so overwhelming. But how is it that I get used to it? When we have a sensory overload, our bodies become dysregulated. And my favorite ways of doing that is to just unplug at the end of the day, to turn off my overhead lights when it's getting darker, turn on my lamps and have really quiet music or no music at all. And sometimes I just have to sit for 5 minutes in silence with my eyes closed. Once you experience that, you can come back and feel less overwhelmed and just a little bit more regulated than they were 5 minutes prior. Another thing I would say is meditation or prayer. I think being able to connect with something that is greater than yourself, or being able to connect with a part of you that is oftentimes dormant, allows us to get back to the important things and get back to being better aligned with ourselves. The next thing is self-care. And this is really self-explanatory. And I think that self-care often is understood as having to spend money. And you don't always have to spend money. It doesn't have to be getting a massage. It doesn't have to be getting a haircut or going to acupuncture. It could be journaling. It could be going on a little hike. It could be turning off your phone, reading a book, taking a bath, calling a friend, going on a nature walk. But I think the important part about self-care, especially if you're someone like me who always has her schedule packed with work and life and activities that might not be self-care, I have to schedule it in. For example, tonight, after I hang out with some of my friends and go to a housewarming party, I am going to take a bath. I'm going to make myself a nice dinner, and I am going to read until I fall asleep. And I'm so excited for it. This is an act of self-care for me, to be able to turn my phone off and get into bed nice and clean and comfy with a nice hot drink and read my night away. That will be truly restorative for me, because I also could just sit on my phone and scroll on TikTok for 3 hours. But am I going to wake up the next morning and feel rejuvenated and feel like I was intentional with the type of rest that I was giving myself? Probably not. So self-care is very self-defined, and you have the opportunity to ask yourself what it is that you need in that moment. Schedule it and look forward to it. Be excited about it. And the last thing is a sensory activity. Anything that causes you to use one of your senses. So that could look like baking or cooking. That could look like painting, playing an instrument, doing self-massage, listening to music. Something that I really love is laying under a weighted blanket. And sometimes I'll just sit there for like 15, 20 minutes and just lay there super still. And I get up and I feel like I'm on cloud 9. But I think being able to check in with yourself and say, okay, what senses are overstimulated and what senses are deprived? And be able to make your decision based off of those answers. For example, if you have been looking at computer screens all day long, maybe taking your headphones and listening to classical music for 30 minutes with your eyes closed. Or if you've been overstimulated and you've been hearing all these different noises all day long, maybe drawing in silence or painting in silence and allowing whatever it is that is in your mind to come up and go onto that page or onto the paper. If you feel like you've been overstimulated by your touch, taking a bath and just feeling the warm water kind of encompass your body, there's nothing better. But I could give you a million ideas when it comes to sensory activity or self-care or somatic regulation. But really, the main point of this is you have to ask yourself what it is that you're in need of. You have to be in touch with yourself enough to say, okay, where is this overstimulation coming from? Where is this fatigue coming from? Where is this irritability coming from? And then being able to target it and find a solution that is going to work for you. Because for me, I love baths, but you might hate baths. You might hate sitting in your, what people say, your own filth. Or me going hiking. You might hate hiking and you would rather maybe go on a bike ride. So this really is just an avenue to being able to create more peace and more rest in your life, but it has to be done based off of your own bio-individual needs. I hope that this episode was helpful to you and that you are able to find new ideas to create a more restful and restorative life for you. I will be back again next week with another episode. As always, you can DM me on Instagram at Olivia Yoko Health if you have any questions or want more resources, and leave a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or comment and like on YouTube. It is always so appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.